Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to Summit Session 23. My name is Shenandoah, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Adventure Nannies. We are so happy that you decided to join us today. And just as a reminder, all of the views expressed today are those of our wonderful guest and do not necessarily represent the views of Adventure Nannies. Today, we will be talking about how outdoor play can positively impact early childhood development while meeting the sensory needs of the children in your care. And I'm thrilled to share a little bit more about our presenter for today, Reagan Fulton. Reagan is the owner. Oh, here comes Crystal now. Let me get her in here so she doesn't miss a second.
Absolutely.
Reagan is the owner of Playful Acre, which is a nature preschool located in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Reagan uplifts and guides educators and parents to find their career life happiness so that they can feel fulfilled at home, school, and work. She has almost 10 years of experience in the education and childcare fields and has successfully started 2 companies, which she runs from home full-time while also raising her 4-year-old son, who I know I was lucky enough to see a sneak peek of some adorable photos of him in Reagan's presentation, so I'm excited about that. Reagan understands the importance of authentic self-expression and intentional leadership, especially when working with the most vulnerable populations in society, children and families. She uses her platform and influence to encourage educators and parents to create equitable access to diverse literature, expand experiential learning opportunities, and preserve the magic of childhood through nature play. You can learn more about Reagan and Playful Acre on her website, which is playfulacre.com. And as a friendly reminder, please just make sure you're muted. There will be time at the end for questions and answers. So if anything comes up, you're welcome to drop a question in the chat. Without further ado, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Reagan Fulton, everyone.
Hello, everybody. It is an honor to be here today. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm super excited today to talk to you guys about nature play. So let's see, let me make sure I got my slides there. There we go. There's Row. So as my introduction said, I am Reagan. I own Playful Acre, which is a nature preschool in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I'm also very active online to advocate for nature play. I'm a lifelong student. I always love to learn and share what I am learning with you all. So this is exactly what she just read. So I'm not going to read this all again. But you might wonder why nannies are on my radar. Why am I here if I own a nature preschool? Why am I talking to nannies? And why do I care about nannies? So before I opened my preschool, I worked as a nanny for almost 10 years before pivoting into full-time entrepreneurship. So I'm no longer a nanny myself, but nannies are in my heart and always going to be part of what I do because I really believe in the work that nannies do. So I am just thankful for you all being here today and being willing to learn. So let's get started. So today we're going to cover what is nature play, what is unstructured outdoor play and what it's not. What are the benefits of that unstructured play and the good, which is how to incorporate that into your play. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so what is nature play? Nature, is really trendy and for good reason. This, get back into nature, get outside. I know that you've heard it. I know that that's why you're here because you've heard about the goodness of it, but why? And what it really is nature play. So nature play, the way I define it, the way we're defining it today is the simple act of unstructured outdoor playtime. And I love this quote, Angela by Handstone. I don't even remember where this is from, but it's in the end, it'll be in the notes. But time and time again, studies show that when children have free play outdoors, they become better problem solvers and their creativity is enhanced. So that's just a little bit, little quote to show you that it's not just me. I promise that there's more research to back this up. And So nature play is a simple act of being outside. What really counts is that the kids are allowed to explore nature and be curious about the world around them. And so what is the difference between structured and unstructured play? It's not just about getting outside. So if you're a nanny, you've likely felt you get outside and you're thinking about playing with them, learning something along the way, but you got to plan something, right? I, for a long time, got bogged down in the idea that nannies are hired to keep the kids busy, that your job as a nanny is to always be making sure that there is something for them to do. And what I've learned through my practice is that's not true. There's two ways to go about it. There's both structured and unstructured play. Okay, so don't dry mouth. So unstructured play is where there's no expectations, pressure, and there's endless possibilities. And structured play involves rules, guidance, responsibility, and planned outcomes. So unstructured play is really just about letting kids discover things on their own. It's about letting them explore freely in nature and learn through their own experiences without, the expectation of what we want them to learn. It's different from outdoor structured activities where we set the rules. For example, if you're going to go take a hike with a specific destination or goal in mind, there's expectations of how that time outside is going to go. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. So unstructured play is all about exploration, about what kids can do and exploring what they can do with their bodies and how they interact with the world. It's about imagination. It means that kids can pretend to be a chef for 1 minute, a zoo animal the next. They're not limited to the toys that we give them. They can pick up whatever they find in nature and just start playing and exploring. This is one of the most fun things and the things I learned most about from my kids, from my students and my nanny kids is seeing the world through their eyes and their imagination, because that's something we really lose as we grow up. Creation, unstructured play is about creating something from nothing, whether it's thinking outside the box and using natural materials for inventive purposes, or literally creating a story out of nothing, creating a world out of nothing. Unstructured play allows children to really create the world that they want to be in and create their own story and create their own timeline and their own, really just give them the power over their decisions, which is, we know is all vital for their social emotional development. Unstructured play, finally, is connection. It is all about building a robust ecosystem of relationships with the family and the wider world. So a story that I want to tell you, that is why I was confused because I flipped them. Okay, there we go. Okay, story I'll tell you about an observation I made the other day around connection. So we were out playing and exploring and I saw one of my little students pick up a stick, walked over to his little sister, and I don't know what they're saying because I do try to give them a little bit of space to really explore out there. So sometimes I can hear him, sometimes I can't. This time I couldn't, but I saw him go over. I've got this one little brother-sister pair. He handed her a stick and she took it and he sat down with her, but then she just got up and walked away. He was a little confused, but then she went out to the woods and she found another stick, similar size, similar length, everything. She returned, gave brother the stick that she had found, and then she took the stick that she had given him and they started digging away at the dirt together. And this was without many words exchanged or anything. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And the lesson, I learned from it it's all we need in life is a buddy sometimes who will give us a stick and who knows that we're going off on our own for a while. We're going to come back with more sticks. So that was just a little story I wanted to share about just how nature can connect us and connect kids with each other and with nature. So structured play, I just wanted to highlight what structured outdoor play does look like, because there are incredible benefits from outdoor structured play too. It can be community building. youth sports, scout programs, extracurriculars, you know. It can also be skill building at home through classes, chores, crafts. If you know me, if you follow me on Instagram, we've been planning our garden. Garden prep absolutely is an outdoor activity, but it is not unstructured because there are certain outcomes that we have a plan. Structured play needs to be balanced with unstructured play to prevent lifelong burnout and mentally unwell children. And I think that, I personally know I have experienced that. You can see me down on the bottom there. If you see me in the yellow shirt in the middle, I was a 2-sport athlete all through high school, where a lot of my afternoons and evenings and weekends were spent in those structured activities. As like a teen, older, 10, 11, 12, and then into my teenage years. And so not having that unstructured time, I really, saw from a personal level how that can really lead to a lot of burnout. So that's one of a personal reason I am very passionate about making sure that kids have that unstructured time in their week, even up and through their teen years. Okay, quick exercise break. So I want you all to think back into your childhood and think about your most treasured memories. Think about, what is play to you? And what sparked joy and curiosity, and what really just made you happy. So if you can drop those in the chat for me real quick. If anybody has any, like, what were your favorite things to do? Let's see. I know mine were things like making mud pies and playing. We would make forts in the backyard. Yeah, there we go. Building forts, capture the flag, sliding in the mud in the rain. Yes, that was one of my favorite. We had a huge ditch in our front yard. And some of my most vivid, happiest memories. Catching frogs, building dens, making potions. Oh yes. I was not the potion maker, but my little sister and cousin, they were potion makers and mud pie makers for sure. Exploring the creek, naming inchworms. I love that, and making up their life stories. Oh, that's awesome. Stealing utensils from the kitchen and pretending to cook. Putting Barbies in a homemade pool. Snake hunting in the wooden lot across the street and digging a hole. So the reason I asked this question is I really wanted you guys to think about those happiest memories, those ones that spark joy. Not one of the things you guys shared was a planned activity, was a, playing, capture the flag. I think it was the closest one to being that. But I think we all know that capture the flag is not usually a adult-led activity. That's a backyard game that kids throw together. So, but that was the only one that even was a planned activity, a structured activity. Everything else that you guys shared was just about exploring, about getting your hands dirty, about getting out there, and just being a kid and just exploring nature. So play really is the highest form of research. That's an Albert Einstein quote, and I just love it. So that is our little exercise break. So let us move along. So how does nature play benefit our kids? Let's see if it'll move for me. There we go. Okay, so there are a lot of different ways, and if you guys are interested in reading the research that I pulled this all from, because this is not just me making this stuff up. There is, wonderfully enough, been a lot of research done lately, and probably about the past 10 years on nature play, finally, as education got so far away from it. Finally, we're kind of moving back, and there's been some research done. So I have a link at the end of this and in your research file that has all of these studies that I have pulled for this. So please look into it more if this interests you. But we are going to go through a few of them. So health and physical development. I think that is the number one that most people think of, and people know, it's the one that everybody knows for being outside. So climbing on rocks, running around a field, building forts from sticks and that kind of thing. What do we mean by health benefits or physical development stuff? Fine motor skills, gross motor skills, joint health, heart health, brain health, all of these things are physiological body. All aspects of them are impacted in different ways by outside sunlight. Your eyes are the only window that vitamin D can be absorbed through your eyes. There's just 1,000,012 facts of how it benefits you, but overall, if you get outside, healthier kids are kids who play outside. The eco-psychological self. This one is a little bit less known, but expanding the extent to which individuals identify with nature. So the eco-psychological self is the extent to which we identify with nature. And unfortunately, we see a lot of children and adults in a very narrow view of what it means to be a human. And they consider plants and animals to be something less than or separate from themselves. But there is a way to expand our view so we see ourselves as a part of living things. This is actually, funny enough, after I wrote this section just the other night, Rowan my 4-year-old son was getting ready for bed. We were laying in bed and somehow the thought popped into his head of animals, people are not animals, or are animals people? And so we just had this little conversation about, well, animals are people, and fish are type of people. And I'm sure you've all had similar conversations, but I thought it was really, really lovely to see that at 4, that he was aware and having a conscious, stream of thought about his place in the world and with other animals and asking those questions. So it was a funny thing because it's not something we had been talking about. He didn't know I was working on, he didn't know what I was working on that day or anything like that. But yeah, it's essential for us to practice for all sorts of reasons, beginning with the fact that it's accurate. We are animals. We are all connected. So as far as science can tell, plants and animals are just as alive as we are, and they are certainly no less worthy of our care. But on top of that, expanding our view like this allows us to tap into the incredible healing powers of nature. For example, imagine you're out with your kids on a beautiful day and you see a bumblebee flying around. So your kids are a little scared and want to hurt the bumblebee. Instead of reacting out of fear or letting them do it, you can use it as a teachable moment and explain to them that the bumblebee is actually helping the plants to grow by pollinating them. And then talk about the benefits that we get from, the plants growing and what would happen without the bees. And then you can also teach them how to properly look at a bee without hurting it. And that's just one example of how you can be out in nature without an agenda, and how it can help to really expand your children's understanding of nature. And I will say my phrase that I use for, especially this particular benefit, as I say all the time, observe and don't disturb. That's what I teach my kids, is observe and don't disturb, and how to really be a part and be connected with nature without disturbing it. So there's a little takeaway phrase for you. Communication and social development. I don't know about you, but I feel like my kids, most of the time, especially I've got 3, 4, 5-year-olds, communicating by hitting or saying, hey. But then when they go outside, it's almost like a magical world opens up. It opens up and the world just becomes filled with, more joy and beauty and more space. As they play together in nature, they just, magically learn how to be kind to each other. And suddenly the 2 little monsters are sharing toys instead of stealing them. And they come back and they're ready to take on the world together. And it's something that I've really seen in practice with my preschool, especially, in winter times, while we still get out so much, not quite as much time is spent outside. And as we this spring are able to pop in and out, easier without all of the layers and layers of snow gear. When it's not, okay, it's time to go outside, let's get ready, that we can say, okay, let's go, and we're out, and then we can come back in for lunch quickly. Just even the ability to pop in and out when people are being dysregulated, when we just need it, is, I can see the benefit in it, just from going from winter to spring. Self-regulation and attention. Children are exposed to nature, the more self-regulated they come. This is because kids who have who are in a natural environment have fewer distractions, like their favorite toys or the TV or the Switch, if you're my son Rowan. In addition, it's scientifically proven that kids who spend outside or a lot of time outside are better able to focus and pay attention and control themselves when faced with situations that could be stressful or overwhelming. Cognitive and development creativity. The benefit of nature play on the cognitive and development and creativity is well documented. There have been studies that show that you can actually buffer a lot of the common stressors in traditional childcare settings. So in traditional school settings, childcare settings, there's stressors that affect our ability to think creatively. When you don't think about the stressors, and these are things like noise, interruptions, light levels, bright lights, it's tough for your brain to focus on what you're supposed to be doing. But when you're outside, your brain feels more safe because those stressors are around you. Different colors, smells, and sounds, and they're natural. Your body feels more regulated. Your rhythms, your circadian rhythms, more in tune when you get sunlight, and as a result, your brain doesn't have to worry about what's going on inside. It's more connected with the natural rhythms of the world, and therefore you're just more calm, and it gives you the ability to be creative when you're not worrying about a million different things inside your head. Okay, so those are the big things, and then two little bonus benefits / senses. So sixth sense, growing up, I know as a child in the early 2000s, I think of, I see dead people, ghosts when I think of sixth sense, but that's actually not what it is. So there are actually a sixth and seventh sense, if you did not know, that are really the senses that are most vital, I would say, at least to how we work. So that's the vestibular sense and the proprioceptive sense. And so the vestibular sense helps you know which way is up. So balance, movement, it is about your place in space. And then the proprioceptive sense is about where you are in space, but in terms of your actions, your movements, your location, and about literally, it's like about the nerve endings. Your proprioceptive sense is in the sense of what's going on around you, your joints. So vestibular sense is, you don't have to think about it, but it doesn't mean it's not important. It helps to understand our body's place in space and is one of the most important senses for helping us move and interact with our environments. But it's not something you can taste or feel, but it has to be activated through movement. And then the proprioceptive sense, we have ears for hearing and we have eyes for seeing, but the proprioceptive sense, also called kinesthesia, proprioception is just so much more fun to say, is why we're able to move freely without thinking about our environment. So think about the way that your body is able to sense its location in space. Depth perception, is related with your hand. It's a complex system of nerves, sensory organs that allow us to navigate our surroundings safely. But proprioceptive, the story that I heard that really woke me up to how important this is how in schools and public schools, they've been banning tag over the past, decade or whatever, because kids don't know they're hitting too hard, they're tagging too hard, they don't know how hard is too hard. And that is related to the proprioceptive sense, that they don't know how hard to push, that's just a tag versus a, gonna hurt somebody. So I just think it's so interesting. And when it comes to, especially with the younger kids that we work with a lot of times as nannies, a lot of times kids will be, if they're sensory seeking or sensory sensitive, it will show up in these senses. So think about if you have ever had a kid not wanting to look up to get their hair rinsed in the bath. It's not because they're just being difficult. A lot of times it might be because their vestibular sense is off, is overstimulated or understimulated. If they don't want to look up, it's going to be that it is overstimulated already. But then also think about the kids who just spin and spin and spin, or want to swing and swing and swing. That's because they are looking for more vestibular input. The fluid in their inner ear is looking to balance. So things that you can do that really help to give them that vestibular input: trampolines, crash pad, running, swinging, dancing, anything that's about big movement, about head movement. And then proprioceptive, think about heavy work, climbing trees, anything that requires movement of the body in space, or pushing, pulling, things like that. And so, even just the other day, I know I put out a reel on Instagram about how my boys, Rowan, and then one of my students, they were going at it. They were running around playing tag, and they were pushing too hard. And I actually remembered that story I'd heard about public schools. And so I said, okay, guys, we're having a hard time controlling how hard we're hitting one another. Let's take a break and let's go swing. I took them over the swings, encouraged them to swing. They started spinning. They were doing, big swings, everything. And then afterwards, I just encouraged them to pop over to our climbing dome and get that proprioceptive, because a lot of times if they get that vestibular input, then you need the proprioceptive input to kind of balance it out and help regulate it. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're having a child who, maybe is struggling with it, with regulating how hard they're hitting or pushing or just moving their body in space. Give them some of these exercises, and these are things you can do inside. But if you've ever had a child in OT, you know that it's a lot of equipment, a lot of money, a lot of work in it. When you just go outside, it's just there, and all of these things are available to you. So even just babies crawling outside, the deep pressure of crawling outside on, grass with, maybe getting mulch, things like that, really can help to integrate those senses and help, kids not be too sensitive to touches, to different textures and things like that. So too long didn't read. If you fall asleep in the past few slides, it turns out that research shows when we allow children to freely explore nature, learning opportunities really just prevent themselves. And it's more effective and a lot easier and more easier to incorporate into our instruction when we are outside in the classroom. So the good part. How do we do this? How do you incorporate it? And specifically, as a nanny, how do you do this? So I've got 3 steps for you. Get out there, create space, and observe and participate. And that might seem a little bit simplified, but I'm going to break it down for you. So get up there. The more you get kids outside, the easier it's going to get. And so that's really the first step, is to really just start, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if nature play and being outside and having unstructured time outside isn't already part of your days, to just start. Kids are wild, they are unpredictable, they have a knack for finding mud for wherever they go. And I know that scares some parents, not wanting them to be, getting dirty, getting messy, but it's really just does them a disservice to keep them cooped up all the time. Unstructured nature play is one of the best things you can do. for kids' development and mental health. And just the more you do it, the easier it gets. So take them outside, take them to the park. It can be as simple as running around in the backyard or letting them run around the front yard while you sit and watch on the porch. Just saying, let's go outside, not really having a goal of what you're going to do. And just start doing it like I said, 5-10 minutes at a time. And before you know it, 45 minutes have passed and they are ingrained, and you've got to get them, drag them inside because to get ready for class or whatever it is. Number 2 would be to create space. Where do we go? So this is a big one. If you don't have a backyard, I know I am incredibly privileged and lucky and so thankful to have an acre of land and woods. And, my yard is set up perfectly for unstructured nature play. That's why I opened a preschool in it. Not everybody has that, and I know that. So if you do not have, a yard, how can you do this? So local parks and nature preserves are always a great place to start, where you can just head out. And if you don't have, how do you encourage it at home though, if you can't get out there? So even if you don't have an acre of land, just finding a good spot in your yard where they can run around independently, a designated area in your yard or, in the park where they can run around free that is safe, setting up loose parts, natural materials. And that's where the nature preserves especially come into play, because if you don't have a yard at all, and if you can get out to, I know at least, local here in Cincinnati, and I know there's ones all over the country. Our local nature preserve has a nature playscape where they just have loose parks. They have climbing things, and it's all fenced in. Basically provides space for these kids to play. So if you haven't looked it up, and if you have a nature center, nature preserve in your area, playscape, naturescape, I'm trying to think of other names that they call them. Definitely look it up, because those are great places to go for unstructured nature play. And then there's also a ton of ways to incorporate it if you do live in an apartment or a city. And I know that that's a lot more complicated, and I had to cut down some of my slides. So if you need specific tips, definitely get with me. But using your porch, using, any common green spaces, there's a lot of ways that you can still get outside, even if it's not, meandering in the woods. Being out, playing in a sensory table on the back porch, on the porch of your apartment, that counts as outside time. And if you really don't have the access to nature on a daily basis, when you can get out to the park, bringing home sticks, bringing home leaves, bringing home items from nature to bring inside is another option that even when you can't connect and get out as much as you could, that you can still bring nature inside. And then last, observe and observe and participate. So, does it mean that I can't play with them? To be unstructured, to be child-led? No, absolutely not. Unstructured play means letting kids pursue their interests at their pace, but it doesn't mean lack of involvement or that they don't need supervision. It also doesn't mean that children have to be running around and playing games the entire time and moving. Kids can learn a lot by the world by quietly observing and exploring. So adults and older siblings can definitely participate in unstructured nature play. But it's important that we let them control it as much as possible, letting them decide what they want to do, where they want to go, and just ensuring that they're safe. And really just following their lead. And it might just mean sitting quietly with them. But really just that observe and participate when you're invited in. Considerations as a nanny. So this is big. I know as nannies, we don't always get to make all the decisions. Part of the reason I started my schools, because I really like making all the decisions for myself and setting up the environment on my own. But I definitely know that you have to have the buy-in from the parents, and you have to get that. So what can you do if you have parents that are resistant? So Chinese proverb that really just wraps it up, but it tell me and I forget, show me and I may remember, but involve me and I will understand. And I know we use these philosophies as nannies all the time with our charges, but it's something that as a parent also that I encourage you to use when communicating with the parents, is involving them in the nature play. And I will show you how to really make them see the benefits of it. Let's see. Ooh, okay, so involve them over educate them. So yes, we can share all of the information, we can share all of the research, and that's something that I encourage. I hope you do share that research with them. But I also hope that you can involve them in the day-to-day of it. And there's 3 steps to this. So we know they love to play, but we have to get the parents buy-in. So how we do that, there's 3 steps. Risk assessment, learning to assess and mitigate risk. When you show parents your confidence and knowledge in this area, it really gives them, puts them at ease and helps them relax and understand that you know what you're doing, that you're not just throwing them out there willy-nilly, that you are intentionally taking them out in nature. For example, if there's snakes or other dangerous creatures near where your nanny family lives. Yeah, I don't know if we have any Australian nannies in the house, but I know I have some nanny friends from Australia, and my headphones are dying, I believe. Sorry about that. I have some nanny friends from Australia, and I've seen pictures, and that would terrify me. So much risk assessment would need to happen on a daily basis. But yeah, so if there's other dangerous creatures, and discussing it ahead of time before you go outside and how to mitigate, being prepared for incidents that may occur, and showing them that you are informed and have decision-making skills and are prepared. Really helps put them at ease. Observations is another tool that you can use. So by learning to observe and document play, you can really bring them into your daily learning, and share. So there's several ways to share your observations, and I'm going to give you a couple different ideas of how to, but really making sure that you're setting aside the time or the process to share those observations with parents can help them really get the buy-in for the nature play. So risk assessment is when we take high risk activities and implement risk management strategies and mitigate the risk. Since the world is full of risk, children need to learn to recognize and respond to them in order to protect themselves and develop their own risk assessment capabilities. So the thing I really push and I really encourage with parents to understand is by taking risks, I am not putting your kids at danger. I am giving them more tools as they grow in the future to better keep themselves safe, because while you can keep them safe for so many years, you can't keep them safe forever. You can't, they're not going to be kids forever. And so by allowing them to take mitigated risk, it allows them to really learn how to do it on their own. So that way, as they grow, they can assess this risk on their own. So a few terms, and I'm just going to go over these quickly because you have a whole worksheet with these terms and with steps that you can print this worksheet out and sit down with your nanny parents and say, this is an activity that I know you guys, if I want to take them on a hike at this nature preserve and the nanny parents are worried about them getting lost. You can write out the risks. You can talk about how you'll mitigate them and really come up with a plan and just give them the peace of mind that, their kids are going to come home safe. Because at the end of the day, that is what they want. That is what's important. So definitely make sure that you get that. I'll tell you how to get it at the end. And then observations. So observations are important. They allow children to understand patterns of their behavior. Observing children in their natural environment can be different from observing them inside too. When they're outside in the sun, rain, wind, cold, or snow, they might act different. Children also might have a hard time understanding why their kids are so dang dirty when they get home. But that's what we do on the playground as we play. So by writing down, what kids are doing throughout the day, by sharing, we rolled around in the dirt and the grass and we got vestibular input. We jumped in the puddles and made mud pies. We climbed trees and made up games. We observed different bugs and animals. And you can just write them down in your phone. You can write them down in a notebook. It doesn't have to be complicated. I also tend to take pictures and then we'll just write down a little note and put it in my phone to later go in. And if you want to document the children and what they're doing, I always think about also sharing, how it made you feel or what you really thought about in the moment to help bring the parents into the moment. And by sharing how you feel or what you're observing and how you connect it to their learning, it can help them see that, by having this unstructured play, it's not just a free for all. You're not just being a lazy nanny because you don't want to plan anything, that it is intentional. And capturing that kind of goes along with the observations. Like I said, a lot of times I'll take pictures and then sometimes even we'll put the words on it to send. So I edited this one, obviously took her name out, but I sent this picture to her parents and said, she loves the snow. She's finding clean snow to eat. She walked around for 10 minutes finding, trying to find snow to eat. So just taking a picture or a short video and a short note about what's happening and how it made you feel. And then how do we share those? So there's several ways to share. And texting seems like a lot of times the easiest way. It seems like the most, obvious way. But I have found that a lot of the times it can actually be really burdensome to text these pictures and observations back and forth, especially if you have busy kids with lots of scheduling things, because those scheduling texts and those more vital, important communications to day-to-day logistics can get lost. So there's a few different ways that I suggest, setting up this communication that doesn't necessarily bog down your text thread. So paper and pen, obviously, and there's, I know there's nanny specific companies that sell bound ones that you can do, but literally can be as easy as just getting a spiral bound notebook and every day. And, when you come home at the end of the day, writing down those observations and then maybe uploading the pictures to a Google Photos or a Google Drive for them to check in. Or, if you want to get fancy and get one of those little picture printers, go for it. In-person check-ins. If you communicate best through words and you want to have that conversation with them, that's great. Make sure you build it into your time at the end of the day, though. If this is what the parents want, if they want to talk to you every day at the end of the day, do not, let it become that you have to give a 15-minute report about all of the things they learned for the 15 minutes after you're not being paid anymore. So that is my big PSA for that. So if you want to do in-person check-ins, and that's why it's important to talk about this when you're, setting up your work agreement. How are you going to communicate? So that way, if you guys want to do in-person communication, you can set that time in. Apps, there are lots of picture sharing apps, like I said, Google Photos even. There's family ones, and then there's even nanny specific apps starting to come out. I know 𝐦𝐥𝐿 is one fabulous one that I've gotten a chance to check out, where you can share pictures. I use one that's specific for daycares called Bright Wheel, but yeah, I have a discount code for 𝐦𝐥𝐿 that will be in your resource file. So because it's a really great one because you can share pictures and keep it separate from planning. And I really wish that I had found it when I was still a nanny. That's all I'll say, because it doesn't really work for me. But as a nanny, I wish I had it. And then email. This is one thing that I have done in the past. Really simple, starting a thread between you and the parents, where you just reply weekly or daily if you really need to, but I would suggest weekly, where you just share some thoughts throughout the day. So those are the 3 ways. So you've heard about unstructured play and how good it can be for your kids and how you can incorporate it into your days. So that is all I have for you. So I hope you get out there and do it. Thank you for listening to me. I am going to, when you guys start asking questions really quick, I'm going to pin a link where you can go and download this resource file I'm talking about. I've just got a bunch of things that I want to share. So I just put them all together in like a Google Drive. So you put your email in there and you will get access to it. And I'm super excited for those resources that are in there. So yes, I am done with what I have for you. So I'm gonna go grab that thing real quick and let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reagan. I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us, and I'm really impressed by how well-rounded your presentation was and how many topics you were able to cover without just sort of feeling like you're gliding over, scratching the surface of anything. Although I'm sure some of it for you, you're like, yes, I'm scratching the surface. I could talk about unstructured play for literally every day the rest of my life.
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever. If you have a question for Reagan, please go ahead and pop it in the chat box. And in the meantime, I do have a few questions lined up already. So Molly asked, do you have any advice for people who live in a big city and may not be able to make it to a park every day?
Yes. So unfortunately, that was the slides that I had to cut out because I had way too much stuff. I touched on it just a little bit, but bringing outside in, if you cannot make it out to a park every day, bring those sticks in to use in your sensory boxes. The other thing is also remembering that even though you're not at the park, there are still benefits to being outside. So whether it's just going outside and taking a walk around the block, it doesn't have to be green. Obviously that might be the best, but you're still getting outside. You're still getting those, the sunlight, you're still getting fresh air, hopefully. There are still benefits. So obviously, while the goal might be to get out, even if you can only get out to a park or to, on a hike once a week or once a month, just every moment counts would be the biggest thing that I would encourage. And then definitely sign up for the blog, because I've got a whole post planned, kind of giving more tips for city dwellers. I did a gardening post with just how you can kind of bring outside in with a garden.
Amazing.
So I'm reading the chat. Mold, so I freaked and dumped them back outside. Is that a right fear? So I am at the library right now and just returned the book, Fungus Everywhere, I think is what it was called. They might have mold on them. That doesn't mean it's harmful. Mold is not all harmful, is what I would say. Really look into, just because it's got some fungus or some, don't bring wet leaves in, soaking wet leaves and then put them in an enclosed bin. That is where mold can definitely grow. But if you're concerned about it, dry things, but toss them and then get new leaves then too, if the mold starts to grow. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm the person who purposely grows the mold on the leaves in my compost pile. So I can't really say anything too bad about mold that grows on leaves, because it really can be beneficial to soil health and everything like that. So yeah, I would just look into it, as long as it's not like black mold. looking. If it's just like that white fungus, throw it out if it grosses you out, but it's not going to hurt your kids. It's not like the same kind of mold that's going to give you mold poisoning.
Awesome. Can I pop in and ask you a question myself, Reagan?
Yes.
So you talked a lot about the difference between structured and unstructured play, and I know that there are some nannies who really thrive on structure and having organization and sort of having plans. And I also know that a lot of times that value is sort of mirrored by the parents, or as nannies, we have a part of our sense of how well the parents think we are performing in our job is how sort of structured and organized we are. So do you have any tips for how those of us who are a little bit more type A and nuts about organization can ease into and sort of get comfortable with the idea of unstructured play, and how we can sort of sell that to our employers who are like, what do you mean you just played outside all day? Like, I thought you were teaching them Japanese today.
Yes. So definitely. So blocking off time is something I'm trying to balance a little bit, even for myself, a little bit more structure into my own routine, because it is all about the balance of it. But setting aside time blocks where you're saying this is our time that we have unstructured play from this time to this time. And then if if you're sharing what you do throughout the day with your parents, I've had both types of nanny parents, both ones that are like, oh, okay, cool. They survived the day. Thanks. Have a great weekend. And ones who want, full report minute by minute. That's where those observations really come into place. Sharing what you observed, how you played, what did they do? Taking pictures or short videos and showing the parents and then yourself too. Because like you said, a lot of times you get into it yourself of, oh, I need to be having something for them to do. Mm-hmm. If you are slowing down and taking those observations and thinking about what they're learning, it helps you to see the benefits of it and then really be like, oh, okay, so even though I didn't plan this, they were still learning XYZ that they could have also learned through this activity. Mm-hmm. And then seeing that when you write it down in that observation and you see really what it had, I think it helps unlock it in the brain, what you accomplished, even though there wasn't a plan for it.
Awesome. Thank you. Kirsten is asking if you have any resources for grounding.
So yes and no. I'm kind of in the beginning of my journey, kind of, more spiritual side and grounding and meditation. So connect with me and I'd be happy to chat with you about that. I'm not an expert in that, but I'd be definitely be happy to kind of send you to where I am learning.
Awesome. And Kirsten, I know that like you and nobody asked me anything, but when I was in school studying opera performance, something that was often prescribed to us by vocal coaches was just to stand with a little bit of a wider stance and sort of imagine that you can feel, as Carole King says, you can feel the earth moving under your feet. And that sort of, if you are like at the 0 point of your spiritual journey, like that is a technique that I also use with kids and adults.
I would say the book that I would suggest to start with, for especially with kids, is Balanced and Barefoot. Angela, I forget what her last name is, but Balanced and Barefoot is really a good one. I grew up as a barefoot kid running around, so I definitely grounding. So yeah, just being the barefoot and just connecting, and even from a spiritual sense, it's talked about as grounding. When we talked about that proprioceptive sense, though, that's what that is. Feeling the ground on your feet and feeling not only the pressure of the gravity and the earth against your feet, but then also the textures if you're barefoot, feeling the mulch or the rocks or whatever it is. That's that proprioceptive input we are talking about. So that, getting that proprioceptive input is grounding in a lot of ways. Just thinking about it from a neuroscience versus a spiritual side. So I love the intersection of that.
Awesome. Megan and Metchis are wondering if a playground is still considered unstructured nature time, or would you recommend just being in an open space without sort of the built-in activities that a playground will often have?
Yes and no. I think that there's a lot of benefits to, being out in the forest and being, truly with no man-made structures. But I definitely consider playground time, as long as, it's not, you have to, practice monkey. I've seen it before. I've seen it. You have to, do exercise on the playground. You have to practice your monkey bars. As long as it's not that type, I definitely still consider that unstructured play. Just, the only playgrounds that I don't consider as much nature play are those ones that are completely concrete. But even that, it's still, as long as the kids are deciding what they do, that's really the biggest thing. Tinkergarten, I see that in the comments. Yes, I love Tinkergarten. But yeah, just being outside and letting them choose is more important than the structure of the playground or what's around them. Letting them explore their environment is more important than what the environment is.
Fantastic. I think we have time for 2 more questions. So one that we had come in, Reagan, is what about people who maybe consider themselves more inside people, nannies who, are sheepish about being outside or don't like insects, don't like touching big piles of leaves? How can they still give the children in their life that experience if they themselves are like a little self-conscious or nervous about being out in the woods?
Yes. So part of that is that risk assessment that we talked about, helping parents feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If you are someone who is nervous about certain things, especially if you can identify, like you said, like if it's insects or if it's, specific textures or if there's something specific you can identify that makes you nervous about being outside, doing that risk assessment and saying, okay, what is the fear? What is the possibility of it coming up? And if it does happen, what can I do? What will happen? What are my options? Researching really good insect repellent. If, finding the best insect repellent, or you're not going to get mosquito bites. Cause I know I hate being itchy. It's a sensory thing for me. Like that is a real concern. But when you take those concerns and mitigate them, if you don't like being out in the sun, finding good sun protective gear. And then the other thing is just to take it little bits at a time. Start small, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. And the more you will find that you will benefit from it just as much as the kids do. And you'll find yourself yearning for it, just as much as they're wanting to be outside, that you really enjoy it as much as they do. You just got to work yourself up to it a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, Reagan, thank you again so much. It has just been an honor for us to hear from you. And I'm feeling motivated. I'm in Tacoma. It seems like maybe it's not raining. So I'm excited to bust out of here and get some outdoor time myself. Friends, please keep an eye out for upcoming blog posts that will outline a lot of the resources that we've talked about and that Reagan shared today. And you can find Reagan on social media at Playful Acre and at playfulacre.com. That's acre as an ACRE. It's an amount of
1 acre.
1 singular, acre singular.
Yes.
Not acres. And then lastly, if any of you are going to the INA conference in Las Vegas next week, I will be there. 4 folks from the Adventure Nannies team will be there. And so if you are running around in Las Vegas, please come and say hello to us. We'd love to see you IRL. And thank you so much from all of us at Adventure Nannies. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And Reagan, thank you so very much once again. We really appreciate it and loved having you here.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much to everybody for being here.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.